What if buying an electric vehicle in Canada does save you money, but only after you drive far enough to make your odometer look like it has a gym membership? Because in 2026, the EV math is not as simple as no gas equals free driving. That sounds nice. That sounds clean. That sounds like something a dealership brochure would whisper into your ear while you're holding a latte. But here's the part most people miss. The federal rebate is gone. Insurance can be different, repairs can be expensive, winter can quietly steal range, and if you live somewhere with expensive electricity, your cheap fuel advantage may not be as cheap as your cousin in Quebec keeps bragging about. So today, we are not asking, are EVs good or bad? That's too simple. We're asking a much more expensive question. At what kilometer does an EV actually pay for itself in Canada? And depending on where you live, how much you drive, and whether your winter looks like Vancouver rain or Winnipeg survival mode, the answer can change completely. Quick disclaimer, this video is for general educational purposes only. It is not personal financial, tax, legal, insurance, or vehicle buying advice. Prices, rebates, insurance, gas, electricity, and vehicle models change, so always check your own numbers before signing anything. Let's start with the big one. For years, part of the EV sales pitch in Canada was helped by the federal IZEV rebate. Eligible buyers could get up to $5,000 off certain zero-emission vehicles. That mattered. Because if an EV was, say, $7,000 more expensive than a similar gas vehicle, a $5,000 rebate could make the gap feel manageable. Suddenly, the EV premium was not $7,000. It felt more like $2,000. That is a very different conversation. But here is the plot twist. Transport Canada says the federal IZEV program closed on March 31, 2025. So for a 2026 buyer, you should not build your math around that federal check arriving like a friendly little maple-scented miracle. Some provincial incentives may still exist depending on where you live, but the federal cushion is gone. And that means the first hidden question is not, can I afford the monthly payment? It is, how many kilometers do I need to drive before the savings catch up to the higher purchase price? Because if the EV costs more upfront, the fuel savings are not profit yet, they're payback. And payback has a finish line. Let's make this painfully simple. Imagine you're comparing two vehicles. A gas vehicle costs $40,000, a similar EV costs $47,000. That's a $7,000 premium. Now, the EV needs to earn back that $7,000 through lower fuel and maintenance costs. Let's use simple numbers. A gas vehicle uses about 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers. If gas is $1.50 per liter, that's 7.5 times $1.50 equals $11.25 per 100 kilometers. Now, let's say the EV uses 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. If electricity is 15 cents per kilowatt hour, that's 18 times 0.15 equals $2.70 per 100 kilometers. So the EV saves about $11.25 minus $2.70 equals $8.55 per 100 kilometers. That sounds amazing, and it is useful. But now divide the $7,000 premium by those savings. At about 8.5 cents saved per kilometer, the break-even point is roughly 82,000 kilometers. So in this example, the EV does not truly win on purchase and fuel math until around 82,000 kilometers. That might be great if you drive a lot, but if you drive 10,000 kilometers per year, that could take more than 8 years. If you drive 25,000 kilometers per year, it could take just over 3 years. Same car, same country, totally different answer. And this is where the EV debate gets messy, because people argue like there is one correct answer for all of Canada. There is not. Canada is not one driving condition. Canada is 10 provinces, 3 territories, 500 weather moods, and at least one uncle who says, back in my day, we just plugged in the block heater and hoped for the best. Now let's talk about the part that deserves its own angry snow shovel: winter. Canadian weather is not a side detail in EV math, it is a key factor. CAA tested EVs in sub-zero winter conditions, driving from Ottawa toward Mont-Tremblant, and found vehicles traveled less than their official range in the cold. That matters because your official EV range is not always your February range. In summer, your EV might feel like a calm little savings machine. In winter, it may start acting like it saw your hydro bill and panicked. Cold weather affects batteries. Cabin heat uses energy. Snow tires, slush, wind, and highway speeds can all make efficiency worse. So let's adjust the example. Earlier, our EV cost $2.70 per 100 kilometers to drive. But if winter conditions increase energy use by 30%, that same EV might use about 23.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. At 15 cents per kilowatt hour, that is 23.4 times $0.15 equals $3.51 per 100 kilometers. Still cheaper than gas, but the savings drop from $8.55 per 100 kilometers to about $7.74. Now, the break-even moves from around 82,000 kilometers to about 90,000 kilometers. And this is before we talk about insurance, financing, or public charging. That is the hidden Canadian EV trap. The EV might still save money, but winter can push the finish line farther away, especially if your commute includes highway driving, no garage, no home charging, and mornings where the car looks less like a vehicle and more like a frozen loaf of bread. Here's another part nobody should skip. An EV is usually cheapest when you can charge at home. If you have a driveway, garage, or reliable overnight charging, your cost per kilometer can be excellent. But if you depend heavily on public fast charging, the math changes. Let's say public charging costs much more than home electricity. Instead of 15 cents per kilowatt hour, imagine your real charging cost is closer to 40 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers costs 18 times 40 cents equals $7.20 per 100 kilometers. The gas vehicle was costing $11.25 per 100 kilometers. So the EV still saves money, but now the savings are only about $4.05 per 100 kilometers. That $7,000 upfront premium now takes roughly 173,000 kilometers to recover. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between this car pays for itself while I own it and this car might break even after my playlist has heard every song on earth. So before buying an EV, the real question is not just where is the nearest charger, it is where will I charge 80% of the time? Because public charging is convenient when you need it, but if it becomes your main fuel source, your savings story can shrink fast. Now let's talk about the bill that shows up after the happy test drive, insurance. EV insurance can vary a lot by province, model, driver, postal code, parts availability, and repair complexity. This does not mean every EV is automatically expensive to insure. Some insurers may even offer discounts for electric or hybrid vehicles. But newer EVs can have higher repair costs because of sensors, battery protection systems, specialized parts, and fewer repair options in some areas. And insurance companies price risk. They're not sitting there thinking, how do we support your green lifestyle? They're thinking, if this thing gets hit in a parking lot by someone reversing like they're playing bumper cars at the CNE, how much will it cost us? So let's add a simple insurance example. Suppose the EV costs $30 more per month to insure than the gas vehicle. That is $360 per year. Over 5 years, that is $1,800. Suddenly, your $7,000 EV premium behaves more like an $8,800 premium. Using our earlier summer fuel savings, the break-even point moves from around 82,000 kilometers to about 103,000 kilometers. With winter efficiency included, it can move closer to 114,000 kilometers. This is why you should get an insurance quote before you buy, not after. After is when Canadians say, that's unfortunate, while staring at a number that has emotionally damaged them. Before is when you still have options. Now, to be fair, EVs do have a major advantage. Maintenance. No oil changes, fewer moving parts. Regenerative braking can reduce brake wear. No exhaust system, no spark plugs. CAA says battery electric vehicle owners can save around 40 to 50% in maintenance compared with gas vehicles. That is real, and for high-mileage drivers, it can matter a lot. But here is the part most people miss. Lower maintenance does not mean no maintenance. You still have tires, you still have suspension, you still have cabin filters, you still have brakes, even if they may last longer. You still have winter tires, because this is Canada and optimism is not a traction device. EVs can also be heavier, which may affect tire wear depending on the model and how you drive. So the maintenance advantage helps the EV, but it does not erase every other cost. The honest answer is boring but useful. EVs often win on fuel and maintenance. Gas vehicles may win on upfront price, simplicity, and sometimes insurance. Hybrids sit awkwardly in the middle, quietly eating popcorn. Now we need to talk about the battery, because this is where people either panic too much or think too little. A lot of Canadians imagine buying an EV and then one day getting a battery replacement bill so large it needs its own mortgage pre-approval. That fear is understandable. Battery packs are expensive, but it is also important not to exaggerate the risk. CAA Quebec notes that most high-voltage EV batteries are covered by an 8-year or 160,000-kilometer warranty. Battery degradation also depends on the vehicle, charging habits, climate, usage, and battery management system. So the question is not simply, will I need a new battery? The smarter question is, will I still own this EV after the battery warranty expires? If you lease for 4 years, battery replacement risk may not matter much to you. If you buy used at year 7 and plan to keep it for another 8 years, suddenly battery health becomes a very big deal. And this is where resale value enters the chat. A used EV buyer may ask, how healthy is the battery? How much range is left? How often was it fast charged? Was it used in extreme winter? Is the warranty almost over? If the market is nervous about those questions, resale values can suffer. Canadian Black Book and Fitch reported that battery electric vehicles had sharp depreciation pressure, with 4-year-old models down year over year. That does not mean every EV has terrible resale value, but it does mean depreciation should be in your math, because the biggest cost of a car is often not gas. It's the difference between what you paid and what someone else will pay you later. That is depreciation, or as Canadians call it, wow, I thought this thing was worth more. So should you buy an EV in Canada in 2026? Here's the clean answer. An EV is more likely to make financial sense if you drive a lot, you can charge mostly at home, your province has cheap electricity, you keep the vehicle long enough to pass the break-even point, your insurance quote is reasonable, your winter range still covers your real commute, you are not stretching your budget just to lower your gas bill. An EV is less likely to make financial sense if you drive very little, you rely mostly on public fast chargers, you finance a much more expensive model, your insurance jumps sharply, you live with brutal winter range needs, you plan to sell before reaching break-even, or you're buying the EV mainly because the monthly gas bill annoys you. Because here's the trap. Saving $200 a month on gas does not help if your car payment went up by $400. That's not savings. That's moving money from the gas station to the lender and calling it environmental progress. Again, EVs can be great, but the math has to work in your driveway, not just in a commercial with perfect lighting and no snowbanks. So here's the real EV rule for Canada in 2026. Do not ask, is an EV cheaper? Ask, at my kilometers in my province with my electricity rate, my insurance quote, my winter driving, and my charging setup, when does this EV actually break even? For one Canadian, the answer might be 60,000 kilometers. For another, it might be 180,000. And for someone driving short trips, parking on the street, and fast charging in February, the EV might still be nice, but financially it might be wearing a very expensive Canada Goose jacket. If this helped you see the EV math differently, comment with your province and how many kilometers you drive per year, because I have a feeling the answers are going to be wildly different from Vancouver to Winnipeg to Halifax. And subscribe to New Canadian Wallet for more simple Canadian money explainers that reveal the hidden traps behind everyday financial decisions.